Looking back, it's a moment that John Lash says he's filed away in his memory. The moment he was sentenced to life in prison for murder, and the very last time he would be a free civilian for the next nearly 25 years.
I remember the judge said, "I sentenced you to life in prison as computed by the State Board of Pardons and Parole." As an 18-year-old kid, 7 years is an infinity to me. I couldn't imagine how I would do it.
In 1984, Lash joined the Army and started working at a recruiting station. That's where Lash says he met a few others who were also involved in the crime. He was locked up just 4 days later, on May 28, 1985.
That was just such a shock to me.
And over the almost quarter century, Lash was incarcerated. He spent time at many different facilities around Georgia over the 24 years and 7 months he was behind bars. Lash stayed at 6 different facilities while he was incarcerated, having spent the most time at Rutledge State Prison in Columbus for 10.5 years. Eventually, he would be released from Central State Prison in Macon. But while in prison, Lash earned a bachelor's degree in human resources from Mercer University, though he says he often found himself questioning what his purpose in life was, until he said he started reading a book that helped him understand that all that time could be spent in a positive way.
Since you're in prison anyway, what are you going to do with your time? And their idea was you could use this time for spiritual practice, spiritual growth. So they taught meditation and yoga and breathing exercises and all kinds of stuff in there. And they also talked a lot about the idea of nonviolence. Nonviolence as a philosophy.
Lash had found a new sense of purpose and motivation in life, even behind bars. He began to get involved in different programs provided by the Georgia Department of Corrections, like Braille transcription, mentoring young offenders, and working as a tutor.
I was able to work with someone and see their reading improve, or they got a GED or something like that. And that act of doing something that was positive and supportive of others felt really good. You begin to learn about having a purpose and how that can make your life meaningful no matter where you're at.
After close to 25 years incarcerated, on December 29, 2009, Lash was released from Central State Prison.
It was kind of surreal, you know, to be standing there like in the ID room and say, "Here's these clothes." It's so hard to describe. You know, I walked outside and there was my mom and dad, my sister, and a friend of my sister's, and they were just like, "Hey," you know, and they're like super excited, you know. And I'm happy, but I'm also overwhelmed, you know, like the stimulus of it is incredible, you know, especially after so many years. I remember I was calling people on the phone, like I had never used a cell phone, you know, my sister's handed me a cell phone, "Here you go," you know.
That would be just one of many more firsts to come. In 2010, Lash got a job and moved to the Refuge of Hope halfway house in Valdosta. He also started going to technical school at night. But he never forgot what he learned about nonviolence while in prison.
I answered a few emails and then I saw something I needed to work on.
He then went to Kennesaw State to pursue a Master's of Science degree in conflict management. The program required students to get an internship, so he went on an interview to be an intern with the Georgia Conflict Center in Athens, where he's now the executive director. Lash says after explaining to the former executive director about his time in prison, he got an unexpected response.
And she threw her hands up in the air and she said, "John, that's perfect, that's perfect." Now, which is not what I was expecting.
Now, years later, Lash travels to different organizations like schools, churches, and prisons to discuss with them how nonviolence changed his life and could change theirs too.
Well, the Conflict Center is ultimately dedicated to preventing violence. What can we do to impact the world, to do something different about that? And we do that with kids, we do it at the jail. I've done it at the prison a few times, you know, in shorter sessions. We do it at churches, because conflict is everywhere, right? The motto of the Conflict Center is, conflict is inevitable, violence is not.
In December of 2017, Lash spoke to a lifers group of about 30 men at Baldwin State Prison. He says the feedback was amazing.
I had a guy say to me, he said, "I've been locked up since I was 14 and I'm almost 40. And he said, you know, I'm really on the verge of giving up. He said, but hearing your story really made me think about what I could do now and gives me hope going forward."
Cassandra Ortiz for the Georgia Department of Corrections.